Hey guys, in this video, I'll be breaking down a few clips in Portuguese of Brazilian basketball legend Leandro Barbosa.
A minha sorte foi que os caras me abraçaram. Naquela época não tinha muito estrangeiro.
So he says, a minha sorte foi que os caras me abraçaram. My luck was that the guys embraced me. Now, if you listen closely, you'll notice how he drops the S in os caras and just says os cara.
Os caras me abraçaram.
And I'll explain why he does this in a moment, but just keep that in mind for now. Then he says, naquela época não tinha muito estrangeiro. At the time, there weren't many foreigners.
Naquela época não tinha muito estrangeiro.
So you might be wondering why he used the singular here, estrangeiro, instead of the plural estrangeiros, even though he's talking about foreigners in general and not just one foreigner. So in the spoken language, you'll notice a tendency to use the singular in a lot of cases where you would normally use the plural in standard Portuguese. So for example, if you wanted to say that Miami has a lot of Brazilians, instead of using the plural and saying Miami tem muitos brasileiros, you'll often hear people say Miami tem muito brasileiro.
Eu não falava a língua, mas tentava falar e acabava falando português e ficava um negócio engraçado.
Here he talks about his struggles with English in the beginning. He says, eu não falava a língua, mas tentava falar. I didn't speak the language, but I'd try to speak it.
Eu não falava a língua, mas tentava falar.
E acabava falando português, and I'd end up speaking Portuguese. E ficava um negócio engraçado. And it would turn to a funny thing or situation.
Acabava falando português e ficava um negócio engraçado.
One of the first meanings that you'll learn for the verb ficar is to stay. But ficar has so many other different meanings. And in this case, it means to turn into or become.
Eu cantava as músicas tudo errado e os caras rachavam o bico. Os caras curtiam aquilo, né?
In this last clip, he says, cantava as músicas tudo errado. I'd sing the songs all wrong. Now, música can mean music, but it can also mean song. So if you're making the switch from Spanish or Italian, it can be tempting to use canção to say song, since it looks like canción and canzone. But canção in Brazilian Portuguese sounds really formal. Most of the time, you'll want to use música for song. For example, I love this song would be adoro essa música.
E os caras rachavam o bico. Os caras curtiam aquilo, né?
Then he goes, e os caras rachavam o bico. Now, rachar o bico literally means to crack the beak, but it's used to mean something like to laugh your butt off. So what he's basically saying here is that his teammates would laugh their butts off when they would hear him butcher the lyrics of American songs. Now this phrase right here, os caras rachavam o bico, is a perfect example of number agreement in the spoken language. So in standard Portuguese, this would be os caras rachavam o bico. But in casual speech, Brazilians will often just make the first part of the phrase plural and keep the rest of the phrase in the singular. In this case, the first part of the phrase os is what tells us that it's plural, that he's referring to several guys. But then the rest of the phrase, cara rachava, is in the singular. And then he actually does the same thing here in the last phrase, os cara curtia aquilo. The guys would enjoy that.
Os caras curtiam aquilo, né?
Which in standard Portuguese would be os caras curtiam aquilo. So you see here how he indicates the plural only in the first element of the phrase with os, and then leaves everything else in the singular. Cara curtia. If you want a more in-depth discussion of this, I highly recommend checking out the book Modern Portuguese. The author, Mario Perini, actually has a chapter dedicated to this very topic called Number Agreement in the Spoken Language. And it's the only book I've ever seen that even talks about it. But this is just a tendency, not a rule. So you'll definitely hear people mixing both this form as well as the standard way of saying it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. If you did, remember to hit like. And if you're looking to level up your Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation, make sure to check out my video with Neymar next.